The rain fell in relentless sheets that evening, soaking the cracked sidewalks of Willow Street until they shimmered like broken mirrors, and there, hunched and shivering on a splintered park bench, was Ellie Carter, her small frame swallowed by a tattered gray hoodie, her face buried in her hands as the sky wept with her, and if anyone had paused long enough to look beyond their own umbrellas and hurried steps, they might have seen not just a woman crying, but a soul unraveling, thread by tender thread, worn thin by battles fought in silence, by dreams deferred, and by a life that seemed to take without ever giving back. She had come to the city with a heart full of hope and a backpack stuffed with borrowed courage, determined to make a difference, to lift others even if she herself had to struggle, but no one tells you how lonely it is to keep pouring from a cup that's always empty, how exhausting it is to smile through endless rejection emails, to volunteer at shelters by day and scrape by on minimum wage gigs by night, to sleep in friends' basements until even their patience wears thin, and so now, with nowhere left to go, Ellie sat soaking in the storm, each tear a silent confession of all the battles she could no longer pretend she was winning, yet even in the bleakness, her heart ached less for herself and more for the kids she used to tutor at the shelter, the ones who thought she was a superhero because she listened to them, for the old woman at the bus stop who gave her half her sandwich last week, for the struggling moms juggling crying babies and unpaid bills, and so, even as the last of her strength drained away with the rain, she whispered into the night, "Please, let me still matter somehow," and maybe it was that prayer, or maybe it was fate dressed in a sleek black car, that brought Daniel Whitmore into her storm, his arrival so silent that Ellie barely noticed until a pair of polished shoes stopped in front of her bench, and a low, warm voice asked, "Are you all right?" A question so gently offered that Ellie's instinct to harden herself against pity faltered, and when she finally lifted her face, she found herself staring into eyes that held no judgment, only a kind of profound sadness, as if he too knew what it was to stand at the edge of breaking. Soaked to the skin, humiliated by her weakness, she expected him to recoil or worse, offer hollow platitudes, but instead, Daniel Whitmore, billionaire entrepreneur, face of magazines she had dusted off at gas station counters, quietly slipped off his $1,000 coat and settled it around her trembling shoulders, a gesture so simple, so human, it shattered the last defenses around her heart. He didn't interrogate or condescend, he simply extended his hand and said, "Let's get you somewhere warm," and somehow Ellie found herself nodding, climbing into the car that felt absurdly out of place among the graffiti-tagged storefronts, too tired to question kindness, too broken to resist hope. Inside the car's cocoon of leather and soft jazz, she learned bits of him. Daniel had built his fortune from nothing, coding software in his college dorm room, but wealth had only made him more aware of the brokenness around him, and lately, he admitted, he felt adrift, pouring millions into charities yet wondering if he was truly reaching anyone, if all the numbers and graphs meant less than a single real connection, over lukewarm coffee in a diner with flickering neon lights. Ellie told her story too, not all at once, but in halting pieces, the way you test the weight of trust before handing over the full burden, and Daniel listened, really listened, with the kind of focus that made her believe her life mattered again, and when she finally fell silent, scared she had revealed too much, he asked her something that made her heart stumble, "If you could do anything, money no object, what would you do?" And without thinking, with the reckless honesty of someone who had nothing left to lose, she answered, "I'd build a place where nobody feels invisible, where every kid, every mom, every lonely soul finds a home," and to her shock, Daniel's face didn't twist into a businessman's polite skepticism, it lit up, as if her words had given form to something he had been longing for without knowing it. He didn't hand her a check or offer her a job, he offered her a partnership, a chance to co-create something real, something that could outlive both of them, and in the days that followed, as the rain gave way to thin sunlight, Ellie found herself stepping into a dream she had buried long ago, standing beside Daniel in abandoned buildings and rundown lots, imagining what could be, scribbling plans on napkins, laughing for the first time in months when they nearly got locked inside a crumbling schoolhouse. She thought it was too good to be true, that any day now he would grow tired of her idealism or decide she wasn't polished enough, but every time doubt crept in, Daniel doubled down, showing up with volunteers, bringing city planners to their side, leveraging his influence not to overshadow her, but to amplify her voice. They called the project The Haven, because Ellie insisted that hope wasn't enough, you needed shelter too. Somewhere you could breathe without fear, somewhere that believed in you before you learned to believe in yourself again. And as the months raced forward, the haven grew from a handful of battered rooms into a sanctuary alive with laughter and second chances. Art classes for kids who had seen too much darkness, job training for parents clawing their way back from despair, counseling for those whose wounds ran deeper than any bandage could reach, and every brick, every mural, every donated chair hummed with the stubborn magic of ordinary people choosing to love anyway. But just as Ellie allowed herself to exhale, to believe that maybe, just maybe, she was building something that could last, the shadows returned, an unexpected audit from city officials. Rumors fueled by those jealous of Daniel's sudden absence from corporate spotlights, whispers that the haven was a publicity stunt, a tax shelter, not a true refuge, and though Daniel met the challenges head-on, Ellie felt the old terror rising in her, the fear that everything she touched would crumble, that she had been foolish to trust, foolish to hope. Late one night, sitting on the roof of the haven's main building, knees pulled to her chest as the city sprawled endlessly before her, Ellie broke down, whispering to the stars that she wasn't enough, that she was still that lost girl on the bench, and it was then that Daniel climbed the creaking fire escape, settling beside her without a word, simply handing her a cup of tea and waiting until she was ready. When she finally spoke, voice raw with self-doubt, he listened as he always did, then said, so quietly she almost missed it, "You think the haven stands because of me, Ellie? Look around. It stands because you chose to keep showing up. Every day. Even when you were broken. Especially when you were broken. That's the kind of strength money can't buy," and somehow, in the gentle certainty of his words, Ellie found the courage to believe him. The audit passed, the rumors faded, and the haven grew. New wings, new programs, a ripple effect reaching corners of the city Ellie had never even seen, each success story a thread stitching hope back into the world's tattered fabric. And on the one-year anniversary of the haven's opening, standing before a crowd of hundreds gathered in the courtyard that had once been an empty lot strewn with broken glass, Ellie took the stage, her heart hammering against her ribs. And as she looked out over the sea of faces, mothers holding toddlers, teenagers laughing, seniors leaning on canes but smiling with something fierce and bright, she realized something profound. She hadn't been saved by a billionaire, she had been reminded of her own power, her own light, and so, voice steady and shining, she told them the truth. "I was crying when he found me, but it wasn't his money that saved me, it was his belief that no one, no matter how broken or forgotten, is beyond hope. That we are stronger together. That we are enough." And as the cheers rose around her like a tide, as Daniel smiled from the sidelines, Ellie Carter stood tall, not as a girl rescued from the rain, but as a woman who had built a lighthouse from her own pain, a beacon for all who wandered lost in the storm. And somewhere far above the city, past the reach of even the grayest clouds, the stars winked down, proud of the girl who had dared to believe again.